Welcome to another episode of the Ironman Insider presented by Morton. I'm your host, Matt Lieto. We're getting pretty close to the IRONMAN Pro season getting started with IRONMAN 70.3 Geelong and IRONMAN South Africa just around the corner. So I thought no better time to have 2023 IRONMAN South Africa champ and 2025 IRONMAN Pro Series contender Leon Chevalier on with us today. He's going to be racing South Africa, so I thought I'd have a little chat with him before the big race. If you don't know Leon, he's a rising star in the world of professional Ironman racing, most recently coming off third place Ironman Cozumel and a fourth place at the VinFast Ironman World Championship in Kona. Born in France, Chevalier has rapidly ascended the ranks of long-distance triathlon, making a name for himself with crazy fast bike splits and run splits and an aero position most of us could only dream of. Got to talk to him a little bit about that today, get some tips. All that being said, his laid-back personality and sense of humor are what make him an athlete I love chatting to and rooting for, and super excited to have him on the podcast today. How's it going, Leon?
Hey, Matt. Thanks for that. That's very kind of you. And yeah, I'll be announcing, I don't know when this episode actually goes out, but I'll be announcing my race schedule this evening, like literally in less than 2 hours. So
awesome. As
long as the podcast isn't out before then, we're fine. But yeah, you've got it. You know it. I'll be racing the Pro Series, and I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. And yeah, we won't scoop you on that one as the triathlon world waits for your schedule. Yeah, I'm excited to hear it and to see you commit to the Pro Series this year. Obviously, you're a well-rounded athlete and one that should do well. What made you feel like this was the year to jump both feet into the Pro Series?
Well, I think the first year, it's difficult to know what to commit to. I had an opportunity with, another series, and I'd also, obviously, I started in 2021 on the long distance scene, and I was pretty successful from the start. And I think 2021, 2022, and 2023 were kind of repeats of the same year, as in, you do an Ironman early season, then you do a World Champs, do a few 70.3s, to get your shape in. And I wanted a bit of a change, but man, going back to Kona in October 2024, and especially with the race that I had, I was like, yeah, this is super exciting. This is really where it's at. And I think I've shown that I can be consistent throughout a full year, and especially, racing 3 full distances. Not everyone is able to get 3 good results out of it. And so I think the series will suit me well. But then, yeah, it's a whole other thing. You've got to do 5 pretty good races, and this year more than ever it's going to be super stacked. I think we've got the top 4 from Kona committed to the series, and obviously all the other guys who maybe didn't do as well as they hoped to in Kona but are still super strong. And yeah, it's going to be exciting for the fans, for the athletes. I don't know if it's going to be exciting or difficult, but yeah, I'm up for the challenge, and it's coming up really soon, so I'm looking forward to it.
That's sweet, man. And yeah, to me, it was fun, obviously, watching the series kind of unfold and, watching Kat and Barnaby have the seasons that they did. But seeing the athletes in the series as the season went on race differently, right? Or at least look at the races differently. Maybe the execution of each race wasn't that different, but the mindset going in and the awareness of the other athletes was definitely something that was different. You excited about that kind of aspect change in your season?
Yeah, for sure. The rankings, they get a bit more defined as the year goes on, and obviously, as the season progresses, you're starting to maybe run out of options if you've had a bad race. We saw Patrick at the start of the season. He had 2 really, I wouldn't even say mediocre, I'd say bad 70.3s. Yeah. But you got that feeling that he was literally just ticking them off and just getting those points. But then he was so good at the actual Ironmans where all the points are, and then winning the World Champs and with that commanding lead. So obviously, yeah, you got to pick your battles. And yeah, by the end of the year, it was so funny. After Kona, you've got the people who are rinsed from racing already so much throughout that year, and then others who are yeah, I'm going to do another race in Australia, and I'm just going to prolong the season, and I need to finish 10 seconds ahead of this person and they need to not beat this other guy. So it's really intriguing. And I think, that 70.3 Western Australia had a lot of focus on it when it wouldn't necessarily in previous years, but I think that's the whole point of the series, and seeing it really be fought out till the end with the last race in Taupo. Kat, obviously, she had it secured. She obviously needed a good race, but we didn't doubt that she would. But on the men's side, with Matthew and Gregory still fighting it out, it was really interesting to follow. And I think for the fans, it's great. For the athletes, it's also that extra incentive to keep pushing until the end of the year. We'll see how it works out, year on year. Like, if you're able to still race hard in December, how does it affect your following season and all of that? But yeah, I'm going to hope I just need 5 races. I win all 5 of them and then I'm sorted. But it's never that easy.
No, it's might not be. And yeah, I was going to ask you kind of your planning going in. Do you have 6 races or backup, or you plan on your 5 races, do the best you can, and that's your bid for the Pro Series?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I've got 2 big goals for 2025. One of them is the World Champs in Nice. I obviously did pretty well in 2023 when we were last there, and I think my race in Kona in 24 showed that I could, I'm inching closer to the podium, and hopefully I can actually land on it this year, if not at the top. I feel like I'm progressing surprisingly well, actually, in training, and so the big goal is going to be those World Champs, but at the same time, the series, you need to keep an eye on it, and I think if you were to win the World Champs and have a terrible Pro Series, you wouldn't be disappointed. And likewise, I think if you won the Pro Series, and I guess you'd probably need a good World Champs to still feature in the Pro Series. I love this concept of the duel. It's kind of like in alpine skiing, they've got the World Cup and the World Champs, and they are 2 different things to pursue. And one is going to reward the athlete that shows up on the day, and the other is the one that can be strong throughout. For me, I'm going to hope that I just need the 5 races. There's a bit of a contingency plan with potentially 70.3 Swansea or Zeelamzee, but I've tended in the past to just have one plan, stick to it, and usually it's rewarded me with good races at the World Champs, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think that can be the difficult part about the series, right? Is I think you've said that perfectly. Like, you've got those races, you got to do the best you can at those races. The series is something else, and I think at times you could see athletes looking at the series as its own thing, and then adding in races that are then going to alter the way they prep for the key A race, right? And kind of take things out. So, and you look at Matthew Marquardt wished he had one more race, right? But in the end, it's like, man, you can't say that your season would have gone the way it did if you added another race in there. And you just kind of, it takes, I think, some courage and some stick-to-itiveness to grab 5 races, do your best, and just not look outside of that, right? But
I definitely had that in I think it was in 2023. I was qualified for the 70.3 World Champs in Finland, but I think it was then I qualified, and then later it was announced that Kona was going to be moved to Nice and brought a full month further ahead. And so I was like, do I go to Finland or do I just stay in the Alps, focus on my prep for Nice? And it's so difficult, when you're there and you're on your training camp base and you see everyone racing in Finland. You're thinking, oh, I could have done this or I could have done well there. But then you're actually, the travel, the logistics involved with traveling all the way out to Finland, racing, and then especially in that key phase of your training for the World Champs, it's so difficult. You get FOMO. I get FOMO all the time, especially commentating for Ironman France now. I get to commentate on all these great races, and it's super difficult not to be out there, but at the same time you just can't do everything, and so you've got to choose. Be happy with your selection. Obviously, if things go really really south and things don't go your way, you might have to readjust during the season. But overall, I think having your plan and being able to stick to it, I think it's what's helped me perform at the World Champs year in, year out since 2022.
Yeah, man, you can't do everything. And I think you have that plan. I think that's a great plan. And to me, it's reminiscent of the days where you saw athletes really trying to chase a Kona qualification.
Yeah.
They would chase a Kona qualification, and then they would negate the fact that if they got it, they'd race like crap because they over-raced.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a very similar lesson to learn, and I think maybe we saw some athletes learn that this year. But
it is difficult because obviously the World Champs is the race, it's the pinnacle of triathlon as a sport as a whole. You can argue the Olympics, but I think, in the general public, the Ironman in Kona is the one that people know of. And so you want to be a part of it. And I guess I'd always rather be an active racer in the World Champs rather than just, having punched my ticket. I've been obviously really, I guess, lucky that I've been able to, go to the World Champs and actually compete towards the front of the race. It definitely wasn't what I thought it would be when I first started. I think the goal was just to be able to qualify for World Champs would be great. But then when you do your first World Champs and you come sixth, you're like, actually, I could do well at these. And then it was only IRONMAN South Africa in 2023 where I felt that pressure to try and qualify for World Champs, because I knew that if I messed up that race, I was going to have to start trying to chase the slot during the year. And the closer you get to the World Champs, the higher that pressure. But otherwise, so far, I've been always able to, to finish the previous season, qualified for the next year's World Champs. I've had a pretty chilled winter, knowing that in Cozumel I got my slot for the World Champs in Nice, and I think that's always a lot of peace of mind, and it allows me to build my 2025 season knowing that I just need to focus on performing in Nice. It's funny seeing all these athletes announce their race calendars that are like, I'm targeting both Nice and Marbella, and it's like, well, you've not qualified for either, so anyways,
no, I think
I'm not qualified for Marbella, but
I think probably I'll cross my fingers for you.
Thanks.
And crossing my fingers makes me feel like I have to correct you, obviously, saying that you're a bit lucky in your performance, or how well those World Championships have gone. Maybe after the first one, yes, but you're like, dude, you're third place away from a flush of a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th place in 4 World Championships. Like, that's clearly luck has nothing to do with it if you're that consistent.
I think I meant to say I'm like quite privileged to be in a position where I can chase those results.
Gotcha.
Obviously, getting the results. There's obviously always a little bit of luck involved, You don't want any mishaps during the race, but there's still a lot that you can do to try and prevent those from happening. And I'm lucky that I'm in a position where I can try and chase those big results. Yeah.
No, that's sweet. And it's you're lucky, and you obviously are analytical. And even what you just said about qualifying for World Champs, because if I'm being honest, I look at last year when I saw you race Cozumel, I'm like, what the heck is he doing in Cozumel? Because he's going to go do the Pro Series, right? But for you to start the year in the Pro Series, not having to worry at all about that qualification, and knowing that your body can recover and get to a spot. Obviously, you're saying training is showing you that you're in a good spot. Those things, right? And that's you just being analytical and being like putting yourself in a position to have success, and know that you now can go to South Africa start line and try to win the thing, because there's no part of you that's like, if I don't qualify, I don't get to go race Nice, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't have to be protecting anything during the race. It does say the slogan of the Pro Series is every second matters, and you don't want to be defensive. Yeah, you want to be full attack if that's where you want, if you want to get the most out of the Pro Series. And also for me, Cozumel last year, it was because I was racing the weekend before that in Dubai, which is obviously nowhere near Cozumel, but I was like, for an extra 7 days for 2024, I could have my 25 season sorted already. And I was like, because it takes weeks and months to get into good shape for a good result at an Ironman, and I was like, literally for the cost of 7 days of just eking out that fitness that I built up for Kona, I can try. And I backed myself that even, if I knew I wasn't going to perform to the level that I did in Kona, but I was like, I backed myself to still be able to get in. I think it was 5 slots available, which was also really generous. So I just thought it was a bit of a calculated move, and I'd been to Cozumel the previous year. So, when you already know the flow of the travel and all of that, it just makes it really easy rather than going somewhere new. And I thought, yeah, let's string it out an extra week, lay on the beach and race on the Sunday and hopefully get that slot. And I also got a podium, which I'd been missing in 24. I think 24 is the first year I've not won a race, which sounds totally, crazy to think of. But it's both been my worst year and my best year to date, 24. So, yeah, it's really interesting. But, yeah, that's why I went to Cozumel, and I was lucky that it did pay off, actually.
No, that's sweet. And, yeah, man, it's funny how you say it was maybe your worst season, but also your best season. And I want to talk about Kona and kind of your feels after Kona going into Cancun, but it's how hard is it to have had before Kona? You wouldn't have said this is my best season and my worst season and my best season. You just say this is my worst season. How do you go into Kona in that space and being like, maybe this is my worst season, but I've been trying to peak for this race. Like, this is the one. Like, you have the confidence going into that. How do you manage that amidst not getting feedback that you're having a good season?
Yeah, I think you did say it there. It's almost like I chose 2024 I think I went into 24 accepting that I was probably going to have a bad season in terms of, outcome of results. But the whole idea was to hit Kona really, really hard. And I did manage to do that. But, as the season dragged on, and I did want to do better than I did in Roth. Roth was that race just didn't go well for me. But still, I was seeing so much progress in training, and that bad race I had in Roth, it was like I was super disappointed. And despite it being like, if you looked at the numbers and at the race, the individual parts, it was actually one of probably my best performance at the full distance. And so to be disappointed with that, I think showed that I'd made a really big step in performance with regards to my expectations. And I think by the time I got to Kona, I was thinking like, I'm out of it. And I think that's probably what a string of not winning results will do to you. And so I did go into Kona thinking, I've already had 3 top 10s at World Champs so far, and it is going to be really difficult to do that again. Everyone knows that just getting one top 10 is difficult. And so I was like, if I can get another top 10, I'll have solidified, what I've done over the last few years. And I just didn't put too much pressure on myself to try and improve on the Nice result on that 5th place. And so I went into it with, I was playing it down for myself. I didn't have the biggest expectations. And I also thought, I'm probably going to come out the water 10 minutes down and have to do the whole race on my own. And so part of that did play out. I wasn't 10 minutes down at the swim, but I did have to do the whole race on my own pretty much. And in the end, I was rewarded by, the closest I've ever been to the front of the World Champs. And actually, to be 10, 20 kilometers deep into the marathon, still on the podium, is something that I hadn't had before. And so it definitely changed my perception of what I can do. And I got a lot of confidence back from that race. And I think it just illustrates how fragile maybe your confidence can be. Although it did take quite a lot of bad results for me to start and erode that confidence. Yeah. And training was going really well, so you still have that to work off.
No, and I mean, knowing that now, going in, looking back at that race, obviously I was out on course on a moto, watching the whole race, seeing you where you were in the field, and now I'd said previously that I thought your race was maybe one of the most impressive races on that day. Obviously, record books would show it's the fourth most impressive race, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was very, you did it all on your own, right? And to know that you did it all on your own, when your mental headspace going into that race was like, hopefully I can just tick off a top 10. And I think, I don't know, is there part of that you had that result because of that mindset, not in spite of it, because you're like, I just need to keep going. Some of these guys are going to blow up and I'll be able to work my way into top 10. So like, even though you were in no man's land, that's kind of the best place to be, like someone with your skill set trying to get a top 10. You're just like, I'll just clean up. I'll let those guys do their thing and I'll just clean up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, you know, especially with the whole the whole talk about drafting distances and race rangers and groups and all of that. I think a lot of people have forgotten that it's still a bloody long race, and you have to do it. You have to do it by yourself. And I think that's something that Sam Lieto definitely hasn't forgotten. You know, you saw the way he got onto that bike coming out the water. He was like, if I'm going to win this thing, I need to put as much time as possible into Patrick and get away, and I'm going to have to do 7 hours 37 or whatever on my own, and I can't rely on anyone else. And I think, nowadays there's been so much of these pack dynamics that people have forgotten that you can go and try and do it on your own, and that you have to be prepared to go and do it on your own. And I had two race plans. It was like, one race plan is like, I have a fantastic swim and I'm in that front group, and then see how things pan out, try and conserve some energy on the bike, try and break away at the right moment. And my other plan was like, whether I was a minute down, 2 minutes down, 15 minutes down, it was like, smash the bike, smash the run to the best of your ability, and you'll see how it turns out. And we've always discussed this at home. It's like, if you took the gaps at the end of the swim and you then did the same bike and the same run as the guy who won, say you come out 2 minutes behind the swim, behind the winner, the eventual winner. If you did the same bike and the same run, you'd be 2 minutes down at the finish. And typically that will win you, that will get you a second place or a third place at this race. And I think it's forgotten by a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's super interesting, because I think there's a lot of things that play with that. And I think part of the reason that does work is that Kona for a long time is seen as, or I always saw it as, the one race where you couldn't just do your own race. You had to go with tactics. Maybe, depending on your skill set, right? But at the same time, those guys chasing that group and those tactics are the reason why your plan works, because they're just killing themselves. And not to pick on anybody, but like, you look at Ben Canute and Matthew Marquardt, every time I went by that group, they were at the front trying to break it. You're like, if you're just doing your own race, you're leaving a lot more in the legs and energy-wise to be able to like actually perform at the back end. Because as you said, the champions aren't doing, like, Patrick was in that group, but that dude let
gaps go and everything.
And he'd come back. Like, he was doing his race inside that race, right?
Yeah. And there was that, I think it was when you came up to me on the motorbike, I think it was quite early on in the bike. I think I was on my own already.
Yes,
but
you were on your own
happened,
all day, as far as I can
tell.
Well,
there was a tiny moment. I came out the water with this group with Gustav, Thor Bendix. I can't name them all, but there was a few of us, and I just got on the bike, came out of transition, really fast onto the bike, and I was on my own, for all of Kuikini Highway, up Palani Hill, and then I hit the Queen K, and I was on my own. And I think they were just dawdling maybe like 20, 30 seconds behind me. It's difficult to judge the distances, but
sure, of course.
Eventually, I think, at some point they came back up to me. Gustav was on the front of that group, and I think he must have put in a really hard effort to catch up with me. And because I had a moment thinking, like, do I wait for them? Because I knew they had some strong riders, and I was like, do I want to do this all on my own? Do I wait up for them? And I was like, you know what? If I'm faster than them, why wait for them? So I might as well ride. If I'm slower than them, they will catch me. And in any case, let's not try and make it too easy for them. And so I just was like, I'm just going to ride my own pace. And eventually they did catch me. Gustav, he went in front of me. It was just before we went from the left-hand side of the road to the right-hand side. Then we switched over to the other lanes. And literally, Gustav, he came up to me, he passed me, and then he rode in front of me for 100 meters. And then he just pulled off to the side of the road and like kind of waved me through. And I was like, dude, you've just like caught up whatever distance it was. Like, why are you expecting me to ride faster? But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to ride it. If they stick with me, that's fine. If someone wants to come in front and take some of the workload, that's fine. But after like 2, 3, 4 minutes of riding, actually, I just peeled off the front again. And I was like, okay, well, that's it. I guess I'm on my own again. And just didn't really think about what others were going to do. I was just focused on the front of the race.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think, I years ago, and I might have told you this, did research when I was racing and found that at that time, there were the amount of people that got on the podium or top 10 that swam like at the time under 51 and were in the front group was, very high. And then there was this gap between like 51 and 54 minutes. There was like one person that had gotten into the top 5 in the last 15 years. Yeah. Because everybody from 52 to 55 is like, I got to catch those guys. That's where my race is. And they blow up and it doesn't work. And like, similar to what you said, like I had 2 plans going in and you have to like kind of adjust. And I think that's where I saw why I thought that race that you had was so impressive. And then especially as the race developed, all this being said, dude, your aero position is bananas. Like, I'm like, when we're riding up to you, I'm like, what is that thing ahead of us? Like, I can't really even recognize that it's somebody on a bike. It's crazy and probably intimidating to a certain extent on like that group of guys, right? When they catch, they're like, dude, I know that I'm working harder than this guy. And like the fact
I'm still working hard, but that's why I'm going faster. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. Like if they're putting in this huge effort to catch you and they see you like not care or not look over your shoulder, not adjust your thing. They're like, oh God, this is brutal. But what was impressive to me was that you kind of stayed on your own all day, obviously made your way up to near the end of the bike. But for so much of that race, it seemed like you were just kind of out of it, right? And like, I don't know if I told you this, dude, you looked right. Like that's what's so crazy about it now is after the race, I saw Werf and I was chatting with him. I was like, he had a great run for him, and it was a great run for him, great run, period. I was like, man, was it one of those days where like you just didn't have it on the bike, so your run legs were there because like you were way out? And he's like, dude, I rode a 402. Yeah, right. Like it just looked like you guys were out of it because it was so crazy. And like maybe speak to that. Like, how hard is it to stay in a positive mindset? Like I'm doing I'm going to plan. And you're riding a 401 pace, and you're still like not at the front of the race somehow.
Yeah, well, you remember that head unit incident? Yeah.
Yes, totally. Yes.
And so I didn't have any feedback. Like I literally, jump on the bike, and it just wouldn't turn on. And so after like 2 minutes of thinking, like, do I just try and keep pressing the button to turn it on, or like I'm not going to not ride the bike just because my head unit won't turn on. So I was like, well, this is it. Just like I've got nothing except my own perceived exertion to go off.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that was the hardest bit, is like not actually knowing your speed or your average speed, because power obviously is great, but when you're riding 42 kilometers an hour, 44 kilometers an hour, 46, it all feels the same. But
Right.
those half a kilometer an hour speed difference, it's minutes at the end of the day, which really add up. And I guess I had the 2022 experience where I think I did the turnaround in Hawi. I think I was in ninth place. And so basically, apart from Sam and the Norwegians, I'd pretty much caught everyone there was to catch on the bike. And so I did that whole section of the bike in October, like on my own, but knowing that I'd probably going to catch everyone on Hawi. Because yeah, that's what happened in 22. I hadn't caught many people on the Queen K, but then I started going up Hawi, and all of a sudden it was like 30 guys. I just went through 30 guys in the space of that climb, and repositioned myself within the race. Whereas this time, I came out the water in a less worse position, as in I was closer in terms of numbers, I think, to the front of the race. I
Okay.
probably got on the bike in 16, 7, or I don't know, maybe 25th position, something like that. So there's less guys to go through. And on top of that, that front group was just moving so fast for the first half of the bike. And so it was really when I got to the turnaround at Hawi and I realized what the gap still was to that front group that my enthusiasm was curbed a little bit. It's
Right.
like, I've been working so hard and I was so hoping to catch them at least on the climb to Hawi. And then all of a sudden to turn around, like to pass them and see that I've still got quite a long way to go to the turnaround. That was really difficult. And so that whole way coming back down from Hawi that was tough. Because I was starting to hurt by that point. I didn't know if I'd averaged 300 watts, 280,
Right.
320. I had no clue. And so it was difficult. Thankfully, there were a few guys getting dropped off that front group that I was able to catch up and ride through. And sometimes it'd be like they'd hang on to my back wheel and I'd be like, "No, you're not." So I'd like it would push me to try a little bit harder up the next riser or something like that. And I think that kept me going in little increments. And then finally we got back to like Mauna Lani, and I could see in the distance that group as you start getting through that volcanic rock, you get to see them. And I was like, right, by the time we get to the top of Scenic Point, I'm going to be in that group. And I put in a massive effort in that little section between Mauna Lani and the bottom of Scenic Point. I tried
Right.
to be like as aero as possible. And yeah, at the bottom of Scenic Point, I could see like Bradley Weiss was like, he was the last guy in that group, and he was probably only 100 meters in front of me. And I was like, you're gonna have to work hard up Scenic Point. And yeah, by the time we got to that viewpoint, I was in the group, and I was like, that's it, I'm in the group. And then that's when they started like breaking up
Right.
and everything. So instead of getting like the little rest I thought I was going to get, I had about 30 seconds to breathe, and then I had to go again and reposition myself to the front of the group. But by that point, I was back in the race, I guess.
Yeah, man. And I totally kind of forgot about that. What Leon was referencing was before the swim, he realized his bike computer wasn't working. He tried to get it to work. And like, I could tell the stress on your face in that moment, which is warranted. And of course I was like, don't worry, it'll be working by the time you get out of the water. And it didn't. So I apologize for that.
Well, it wasn't your fault. To be honest, like we had the mechanics on point, and like
Yeah.
everyone looked after me, and they managed to turn it back on. And then I was like, sweet, it's working. We thought it was just like a battery issue, that it was
Yeah.
somehow out of battery, but no, it had full battery. And then so I was like, I'm just going to do as normal. I usually have it on during the swim and just on pause or something like that. And then when I get to the bike, I just wake it back up. But as I kept pressing it, and it just wouldn't wake up. And one of the mechanics, he'd gone back up to his hotel room,
Yeah.
got his own Garmin, put it there to like next to my bike. And I was like, you've got a split second to decide whether you're going to try and keep
Right.
trying turning yours on and risk not having a Garmin, or do you like, unscrew
Right.
it from your bars, go for the other one? And I was like, I'm just going to try. I don't want to spend 2 seconds getting the other
Sure.
Garmin. And then that was it. I was like, no Garmin. And then I jumped on the bike and snapped my rear bottle off. So I was like off to a really bad start. But that's what Ironman is all about. It's all about these mishaps and how you get over them.
Totally. And like you never have a perfect race. It sounds like Patrick had a perfect race this year and it seemed like he did, but generally that's not the case. And that's another reason why I'm so impressed with your race, especially someone who seems to be so analytical, smart about race planning, is the chaser. Like you're kind of the worst person for their computer not to work, right? But you like got through it, right? Because like I'll do this on my own. I'll have all my data. I'll be able to figure it out. But like to me, that's impressive and maybe tells us that, you know, at sometimes that old school maybe is helpful. Maybe if you had all that information, you wouldn't have, you might have pushed 15 more watts than you thought you were capable of out there, right? Like who knows?
We
right?
never know. Like, that's the thing. To be honest, we would love to have the data just to know,
for sure.
just to know what I've done. But we'll never have it. And I don't think it changed my style of racing too much. Like I'm still very good at, even when I've got all the numbers and everything, I don't try and hold myself to a certain number until very far into the race, where I try and get my normalized power to somewhere a bit manageable. But I think I rode the bike as I usually would. It's just with the absence of feedback in terms of speed, and
right.
Yeah, that was difficult, but yeah, there was nothing I could do about it. So yeah,
that's super impressive. Yeah, so obviously that bike ride was what it was. I want to get to more things outside of Kona, obviously, as well. But it'd be remiss if we didn't talk about what, like that bike set you up to get you in a position to have the race that you did. But the way you were running got you into that second place position in the energy lab. And did Ditlev get to you before the energy lab?
No, he got me. So I managed to get the turnaround in energy lab in second place, and it's when we went through that aid station coming after the turnaround. So that aid station before we get to the personal needs, that's where he came. He passed me, and Rudy, he got me just before the aid station at the top of the energy lab. The one where the helicopter blew up the tent and everything.
I remember. Yeah. Yes, I remember. That was it felt like chaos. And we talked about this after the race. But it's when you say that, it's not surprising that's where it happened, because now that you've had that experience in Kona, you know that is the hottest place on earth, that section, right? Because there's this tailwind, right? So if at that point, it seemed like you were still racing with hope that
Patrick was gonna have an issue. Yeah.
Right. So you're trying to win the world championship. So you're on the rivet. You're doing everything you possibly can. And then not knowing that when you're going up that hill, it's like no matter what your output is, someone else is clicking up the effort level, and it's just it's brutal. So yeah, tell us about what it felt like and what you were going through up until that point, and then what that weight kind of felt like when that all kind of came down on you.
Yeah, I went through a lot of emotions on the bike. On the run. To be honest, I came off the bike and my legs were totally destroyed, because obviously I'd worked super hard to get back to the group, and then somehow I broke off the front of the group with Matthew Marquardt and Minho Kulas, and so it's not. Sometimes I try and like soft pedal the last few kilometers into transition, but this time it was like we're still on it, and like I've had 0 seconds respite throughout this whole race. And so you swing your leg off your bike, you give it to your catcher, and then like those first few strides through transition on the pier were like so tough. And also I still thought at that point that Sam was like 10 minutes up the road, that Magnus was with him and all of that. And then I get into the tent in transition, and Magnus is just sat there on a bench, like with that 1,000-yard stare. I was like,
he was so cracked.
What's just happened here? I was like, why is Magnus, like, it just, nothing made sense.
Right.
And so I just do my thing, just go through transition as quickly as possible, get onto the run. Like, it was weird being out of transition ahead of Magnus. And also in my mind, I was like, that group with Patrick, with Christian, with Rudy, Gregory Barnaby, Bradley Weiss, everyone, they're only like 90 seconds behind me. And if they're all going to start running 2:30s, and at that point I felt like I'd be lucky to break 3 hours, I was like, this is going to be I'm just not even going to be in the top 10 at this point. So I was like, I'm just going to take it steady, and all of a sudden everyone's just going to rush past. And no, I was on our lead drive and just running, and I was gaining on. I had Christian Hogenhaug that was right in front of me, so I caught him first, and then we had Robert Callan, and I was like, oh wow, I'm like podium positions here. And Meno Kulas, he'd caught up with me really quickly, and I was like, he's a big dude. He's a rookie here. He's not going to sustain this pace forever. I'd obviously forgotten he'd run like a 2:35-ish in Frankfurt during the summer, so he obviously can run. Yeah. But I was just like, yeah, I shouldn't be thinking about Meno. He's not going to do well or anything. That came back to bite me in the end, obviously. But yeah, I wasn't too concerned. And Patrick came past us like he was only running a 5K. And I was like, Patrick, you do you. Like, back in Nice, he'd come past me, I think, at like the 15-kilometer mark, and I'd run a couple kilometers with him. I think we went like 3:20s for 2 or 3 kilometers, which was a bit ridiculous. But this time I was like, I'm not even going to try. You do you. Yeah. And then, I kept getting feedback from the side of the road, people telling me that I'm running faster than everyone behind. And actually, we come to the turnaround on a lead drive, and Christian's not that far behind, but it's pretty strung out. And that's when I start feeling a bit more comfortable. I'm just trying to stay easy, not push too hard. In my whole mind, I was like, I'm going to push from the turnaround in Energy Lab. And so literally I ran the whole thing. I was like super composed, and now starting to, I was back into third position basically. And I was like, well, you're probably going to podium here, and that's going to be quite a big result for you. And then all of a sudden, I passed Sam Laidlow, who was obviously not in a good place. And so it was like, oh shit, it's between Patrick and me. And the way I'd seen him start on a lead drive, I was like, he's either, have an extraordinary run, or it's going to slow down for him. And that little point, I think probably 15K into the run, where someone told me I had 2 successive splits from people on the side of the road, and I'm not sure you can always trust those splits, but basically I got closer to Patrick in that between those 2 splits. And that's when I thought, well, I'm in second here, feeling super, super comfortable, and I'm now catching Patrick, who's obviously died after trying too hard for the start. And so in my mind, I was like, right, I'm just going to go and keep the pressure on and go and get Patrick, and I'm going to win the world champs. And I guess I still had probably like an hour and a half of running to do, so it was a bit premature. And it's exactly that point, as you said, the road on the Queen K just like starts rising. You get that tailwind instead of the headwind. There's a couple aid stations a bit further apart, and I guess blew my doors in the space of 2 kilometers, went from feeling super comfortable to just running a bit hot. And then I managed to keep it together on the way down Energy Lab. And then after that turnaround, that aid station, I was like, all of a sudden I went from trying to, chase Patrick to trying to defend from Magnus and Rudy that were close behind me. And to be honest, you do that turnaround at Energy Lab, and everyone's coming down the Energy Lab, and you realize like there's like 10 guys that are within that little stretch of road. And I'm like, oh, again, there's still there's such a long way to go till you get to the finish. But I quickly went from trying to chase a world championship title to defend my place on the podium, and beyond that, just try and stay cool and able to run the last bit. And then, Magnus overtook me, Rudy overtook me, Meno even overtook me. And then we got back onto the Queen K, and I was like, I can push the last 10K now and I was going to chase Rudy all the way to the end. And there was this little bit of cat and mouse where I'd get a bit closer to Rudy, and then I'd realize, well, it's still like 30 seconds or 40 seconds, which is still really hard to get. And so I'd have a bit of a moment where I'd be like, there's no hope. And so slow down a bit, and then you get hopeful again and you start chasing harder. And it's probably what saved my fourth place, because I didn't know that Menno was still close by. And it's a almost 8 hour race, but somehow you're sprinting all the way to the line. Yeah.
No, and this year
tough.
that third through eighth group, like it was a knockdown, drag out battle. Like there were so many positions so close, that were close. And I think like listening to you say that and looking at your results, or listening to you tell kind of how that race went, and looking at your results in previous world championships, as we said, 7th, 6th, 5th, then a 4th with that result. And that being, again, you realistically at a moment thought, and you were correct in thinking, that you had an opportunity to win a world championship. Would you have ever thought, with how the race went up to that point, like how much does it show you what it takes to win a world championship is obviously all this fitness and everything, but it's like, oh no, I got to like totally do my own thing and kind of not even trust my body's feedback at times, right? Like it's tricky.
I've gone into this winter being like, have I been thinking this wrong this whole time? Because like I'm so focused on trying to get my swim better, and it's like I'm not a great swimmer, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm not awful. And no. I showed in Kona that I can get back in the race. And I've done it before. In Nice, I came off the bike ahead of Patrick, minutes ahead of Patrick again. And he came second in Nice, he won in Kona. And like, I'm getting off the bike ahead of a guy who's podiumed and won 2 consecutive years. And I'm like, I'm also like I'm a much better runner than a swimmer. And I'm so far from running close to what my running ability is in a race. And I'm like, dude, like you could try really hard to gain 30 seconds in the swim, but I think I've got the ability to be one of those 2:30 runners. And it's like, if I just did that off the bike and the swim that I can do already, then I would be podiuming every time without any issues. So I'm like, actually, should I be focusing on my run? You can't do everything at once, and it's not as easy as saying, oh, let's just run a 2:30. But yeah, it's definitely given me a bit of a new perspective on how the race is done. Yeah.
It's so awesome. And that's one of the things that I love about Ironman and World Championship specifically, is that you never know. Like you wouldn't think that the race where you thought, when you saw Magnus sitting there, that you were like, your legs were done and you were screwed. You never thought that would be the race that tells you how to change maybe your preparation and execution of a world championship. It's just so right. You never know where it's going to come from. And I think, you're known also for kind of that analytical attitude going into, the bike and your training specifically. Obviously having the ability to run what you want to run and still bike how you're biking, you have to have that. And it's cool to see how many of you guys, you and Magnus and a bunch of other athletes that are like engineering backgrounds and just totally love trying to get every little second or watt or get that CDA tighter out of your bike. Can you talk us through, as you look into the season? I know that's a focus for you, and like I think you said you're going in the wind tunnel this week. Every other time I get on Instagram, I feel like you're in the wind tunnel doing something, right? Like,
no,
which is rad.
It's literally, it was the only time I went into the wind tunnel last year in May with Wind Republic, my tri-suit and like bike kit sponsor, and the whole idea was to have the fastest tri-suit that we could make. And obviously you look at the way Kona went, it's a pretty fast suit, so we definitely did well there, but it was all about the suit. And up to that point I'd never been in the tunnel to optimize myself or my position or my kit. And finally, a couple of days ago I was in the tunnel with Drag to Zero to work on myself, so like testing helmets, like doing all kinds of tests that I probably should have done 2 or 3 years ago. But so far I'd done a really good job with just thinking things through and getting advice from the right people, and just, yeah, obviously it was working well, but now we're getting to the point where we're trying to optimize a little bit more, and it's nice to know that we can still get some gains. Like, the gains are obviously like smaller and smaller, but
Yeah.
it's nice to have. And also, I've got great sponsors, partners, and more, I guess, more ability to reach out to people to help. When you're just starting off and you're a new pro, like, no one wants to like give you stuff or let you try stuff. So I'm getting to that point where, yeah, I can ask for stuff like that, and it's great to try it out, and hopefully, this season will be even a little bit faster. And still, I'm improving in training, which remains, the biggest place to make improvements.
Dude, and it's awesome to see that. And I think I'm obviously didn't do enough of my research. I was kind of joking about you're always in the wind tunnel, but to know that you got the position that I saw in Kona that blew my mind, never having been in the wind tunnel, shows how much you're working outside of things. And and dude, like, me and a buddy did something like that on graph paper 10 years ago when I was trying to figure out my aero position, right? Like, you have to think outside the box. And is there part of that, like, you having, like, I'm stoked that you're getting those opportunities and that sponsors are helping you out. But, like, I remember talking to you in Nice, and I was like, dude, did you see that Magnus got a seat drop? You're like, dude, I don't, like, dropper post. Like, I can't do that stuff. Like, it's cool that these guys are doing that. But, like, is there part of you, like, having to grind for your, like, you having that, all those results that you've had, like, doing it on your own, doing the bootstraps, that, like, makes you maybe a little more on the blue collar side of things, where you, like, appreciate what you're getting and maybe have more knowledge behind kind of the changes that you're making to get there?
Yeah, I would definitely say that I've grinded to get where I'm at. And, like, when I went into the wind tunnel 2-3 days ago, I was like, I'm lucky that I'm at a point where I'm not optimized yet. Whereas, a guy like Sam or Magnus, they're already pretty much as fully optimized as they can be in terms of available technology, the frame set of the rules and all of that. They've already been, pushing at those limits for the last 2 years. Like, Magnus has been testing for years and years. And even in terms of, like, my training or my setup and everything, there's so much that we've not yet, like, fully pushed into the details. We were always, when I started off being coached by Rob Cheatham, it was all about, getting the low hanging fruit. Like, let's do the training properly. Like, if you're bashing out 30 hours a week, every week of your training block, you're going to get into a great position when it comes to race day. Let's get the best tri-suit that you can get, like, off the peg pretty much, or, like, be with the best bike, the best wheels. Like, let's do all of this stuff before trying to get lost in the tiny details and forget about, the bigger picture stuff. And I'm also, I guess, really lucky that I'm really flexible. Like, I can get myself into that position and it not feel like it's almost like the position that I naturally gravitate towards, rather than something that I've had to contortion myself into. But yeah, there's so many little things, like special bottle cages or stuff like that I've not sought after. But I'm also riding pretty much the best bike that you can get off the market, and there's not much in terms of, like, tiny alterations. I could go ahead and replace all the screws on my bike and save 30 grams, but I'm also somehow, like, 5 to 10 kilos lighter than almost all my competitors. So yeah, I don't know, I guess I'm really lucky that I'm in this position where, it's working all right so far. And then I still want to have, like, a really good balance with life and my partner Flori, our dog, like a normal life outside of triathlon. And I don't want everything to be so optimized that I lose touch of what normal people do, if that makes sense.
No, totally. And then maybe that's more what I mean when I say blue collar, is it seems like you have that well-roundedness. Shout out to Poppy. Oh, Poppy's doing well.
She's good. She's good.
Awesome. Not whining in the background of the podcast like my dogs are. Yeah, like it seems like you have that balance, and having other parts of your life make, I don't know, it's hard. It's different personalities, right? Like there's no way you could do what the Norwegians are doing and be like happy and like want to do it.
Yeah,
right?
so this will sound really crazy to a lot of people, but yesterday, so we were Wednesday, I got in the pool at 7:45 because I've got access to like the local British Triathlon squad on Wednesday mornings.
Sweet.
And so usually 7:45 I'm still in bed, but on Wednesdays I get up early. Well, for me it's early.
Yeah,
and I get in the pool early, but then I get home and it was the day after Pancake Day, so we made pancakes. And then had a family nap. It's amazing. Watched like the Full Swing episodes on Netflix.
Rad.
And it was super sunny yesterday. And by this point, it's like probably like 12:30. And all I've done is this 90-minute swim. And I still have 5 hours of training to do. But so what do? I just go to the back of the garden. I just picked up some wood, so I had to chop it up and stack it up. And so I just spent an hour chopping wood and setting it out to season. And and before you know it, it's like almost 3 p.m. and I'm like, right, I should probably start my brick session now. And I did a 4-hour bike and an hour run. And I finished, it was 8 p.m., 8:15 or 8:30. But just shower, have dinner and go to bed. And but at least I got to spend some time with the families and friends, chop some wood and get in the sunshine.
No, dude, I love it.
That's what I do.
Dude, that's great. And don't, I mean, you're not going to, I don't need to tell you not to change because you're not going to, because you realize that like for some people that waking up at 5, life just being triathlon works. And that's great, right? But for some people, if you try to put yourself in that box, it's never going to work because there is that happiness quotient and that like part that you can't really put into the metric, but like that is having effect on like your ability to react to the situations that we talked about in Kona, but to like absorb and have the quality of training that you need to get yourself in that position in the first place, right? Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's I always say it's about being able to like, what's the best way for you to execute the best training possible for yourself. And for me, I know what that training is like. It's about 30 hours a week. I don't know the specifics of swim, bike, and run, but there's 5 or 6 swims, and there's certain hours on the bike, and there's a couple sessions on the run, and that sort of stuff. And it's like, I'm a professional athlete. I've got all the time in the world to do these sessions. How do I put myself in the best possible headspace and physical space to do those sessions to the best of my ability and do them every week for the whole duration of my training block? And if it means that on a Friday afternoon when I've still got 5 or 6 hours to do, I'm having a coffee at the local, cafe because it's sunny and it's 2 p.m. and we've just walked the dog, then I'm going to do it. And I'm lucky that Florrie's like, she understands that totally and she supports it, and she knows that when it's a specific training block, like for a big race, then some days I'm going to finish at like 9 p.m., but then the next day we can go out for brunch because it's an easier morning and that sort of stuff. So it's all about the balance, and
That's awesome. And
I don't have kids also, so it helps, probably.
Well, Poppy can hear you, dude.
She can, but she's also really really happy to just snooze all day, and she loves those dog walks. Like, when it's sunny, like I do spend a lot of time on the turbo because it enables me to, I guess, in the UK it's dark at 3 p.m. in the winter, so it's just impossible to get all of that training done in sunlight. Like I've done most of my running with a head torch on for the last few months because that's how it is. And I don't mind because I get to have a nap in the afternoon with my dog and throw sticks for her. So,
I love it. I love it. And yeah, and I also want to talk about the fact that I should have done this in the intro, but you're
Okay.
also a colleague as well, doing all the, as you mentioned, doing the commentary for L'Equipe. Has that been sweet? Like unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to understand it, so I haven't watched it anyways. But I've not like we've worked the same races together while we're both watching that same feed. But how has that been? And is that another thing that helps you? Like obviously, you're focusing on triathlon when you do that theoretically, but you're not all about your own thing. You're focusing on a different skill set that you're learning.
Yeah, I get. Well, I'm aware that triathlon as a professional athlete is, a short-term career. Hopefully, I can go till I'm 42, like old Cam Worth and Jan Frodeno did.
Yeah.
But so that would give me another like 15 years. But yeah, as I said, like about 30 hours of training in a week. There's a lot of hours left to do other stuff, and I got the opportunity. I think it was back in early 23. Yeah, I commentated Ironman Texas. I believe it was the one that Rudy won with that like epic finish. Matthew Marquardt, who was doing his first
Right.
pro race, and Kat Matthews won that after coming back from her like crazy accident. And yeah, that was the first commentary I did. Like L'Equipe just asked me, like, we're doing French feed for this race. Would you like to be our like special consultant? And I was like, yeah, sure enough. What else am I going to do? I'm going to watch the race at home anyways, so
Right.
I might as well like commentate on it. And yeah, so that was the first one I did, and I did Ironman Portugal later on in that year, and then for 24 I got signed on for quite a lot of races of the Pro Series. And I was talking about FOMO earlier. Like, there's nothing harder than to commentate on a race. Yeah, there's nothing harder than to commentate on a race where you feel, fit and like you could do a good job. And then there's other races where you've not been training much, or you're recovering from a block of training, and you're like, I'm so glad I'm not doing this race right now,
Right.
because I would be nowhere near the front. But yeah, it's great to see the other side of what it is, and you get like a big appreciation for the commentator's job, because when you're in hour 11 of commentating a race and all you've had were like 90-second breaks sporadically every 10-15 minutes, like it's a long day. And yeah, it's definitely, I think I've gotten better at it over like with every race, and the guy that I commentate with, we've got like a good rapport. And yeah, it's great. We get to chat about the race, about other stuff, and yeah, it's good, and I enjoy it. And like watching the races, it also makes me want to go and do the races. So it's a great way to get like a bit of in-depth knowledge about the courses or the dynamics of the race. And so yeah, it's good, and I'm going to do it again in 2025, and hopefully for a few more years too.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, long story short, you're coming for my job when you're 42, but just keep focusing on the French
Yes,
stuff.
yeah.
Just leave
No,
the
it's
leave the other
great
stuff
to
in
know
there.
that I don't think there's other other feeds than English and French, and so it's great to see that the demand is there for the French commentary. And it's definitely not a coincidence that there's so many strong French athletes. It's because there's a really strong culture for triathlon, whether it's short course or long course. And yeah, La Chaîne L'Equipe is like showing a lot of races, and
Sweet.
it's nice to be involved. Yeah.
Okay, so I know we're going to let you go here in a second, and I know you said you're announcing your schedule will be announced by the time
Oh
this
yeah,
podcast
I need to
comes
post
out.
on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Besides Nice, and obviously South Africa, when you're doing that, which race are you most excited about besides Nice this year?
Okay, yeah. So I'm racing. I'll just run down the races I'm doing. So this is the plan: South Africa, 70.3 St George, Lake Placid, Nice, and Marbella. Obviously, like Nice is the big focus. I don't know if I'm excited for it, because there's obviously the weight of expectations and
Gotcha.
like the pressure. So it's different. But I think the one that I'm like properly pumped up for is Lake Placid.
Awesome.
from watching the coverage last year. I know there's a lot of dark zones, like dark spots on the on the coverage, but the course looks awesome. It looks beautiful, and I think it's exactly the sort of course that would suit me. And then on top of that, you know, I saw, well, the way Trevor Foley, he raced that and ran a 2:35 or 2:36. It was like mind-boggling to me. And yeah, I hope to go there and be able to do better than what he did. That's what I'm going to train for. But
Awesome.
yeah, going back to St. George is going to be pretty cool too. After doing my first World Champs there, it's the last time they're having the race over there. So yeah, it's definitely going to be tough. It's going to be a super tough season, but yeah, it's great that's the great thing with Ironman is like there's a lot of races to choose from. If you don't want to go back to a race, you don't go back, and if there's a race that you really like and want to go back, well, you can just go back and do it, and you've got that freedom to choose. And yeah,
and so many different courses for different strengths, and yeah, you're gonna love Placid, and that is a tough course. And I mean, this is, dude, I think I was 5th place there with like a 9:01 or something, right? Like, this is a long time ago, but like, I remember first time we saw someone run a 2:55 there, our heads blew up. And the fact that Trevor is running 2:36 is crazy, but no doubt you can do that as well.
Hopefully, I've got a proper training camp planned, and yeah, we'll see. I think it's 8 weeks out from Nice, so it's a bit of maybe a tricky, succession of events. But I also think if you're in the right space, we're getting married at the end of May too. So,
right, congrats.
Like, you know, like I can't do Cairns, or like there's a few races I can't do because of that, and so no, it's looking good, and I think I'll be in really good shape for Placid, and hopefully even better shape for Nice. And then I'm excited to do a 70.3 World Champs too. It's like everyone always asks me, oh, why are you not doing World Champs and everything. It's like, oh, you gotta pick your battles, and so we'll see. That's what's great with the Pro Series. It kind of forces you to do some races, but then obviously you need to choose wisely too. So it's going to be a big season.
No, I love it. I think that schedule is seems like timed out well. 8 weeks, in my opinion, I think is kind of perfect. If you if you have a good recovery, you have enough time for a block and a good taper in. And sounds like you've built up your first go at the IRONMAN Pro Series well. And dude, best of luck at your first race in South Africa. And dude, we appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. Every second counts.
It does, and I'm pumped to watch and commentate your South Africa. So
perfect. Let's hope it goes well. Yeah,
awesome.
Hopefully I can be on camera. That's what I'm aiming for.
You will be on camera, and I know you've got I'm sure another session today because it's
I've got to be at the track. I've still got a bit of time. 7 p.m. start, so a bit of time to get some crumpets in, and
awesome.
And a bit of coffee maybe.
Love it. Awesome, man. Thanks so much. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Matt. Yep. Cheers.
Well, another awesome chat with one of our IRONMAN Pro Series athletes, Leon Chevalier. Love that dude. Love his attitude. I think it's really cool for us to be able to have all these different personalities and see the different ways that they obviously execute races. As Leon kind of talked us through Kona, I think that was pretty special. And how they prepare and how their lives look as they prepare for these Ironman events. And obviously, Leon takes a little different approach, and one that most certainly is working for him. And super stoked to get the insight on that. And if you haven't listened to our podcast, our last podcast, we had Laura Phillip on, our defending Ironman world champion. And, her approach is also different than some of the other athletes that she's racing against, and kind of how she's doing her off season and all that. If you haven't listened to that, I think you should go back and do so. It was a pretty cool chat. And to stay across all the latest Ironman and IRONMAN Pro Series news, follow at IRONMAN Try on Instagram, and check out proseries.ironman.com for standings, athlete bios, episodes of A Fighting Chance, replays of the races, and more. And of course, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Morton, the official sports performance nutrition partner of the IRONMAN Global Series. All Ironman athletes have access to Morton hydrogels and solids on course in 2025. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you're sitting on the trainer, you can also watch the podcast as a video on our Ironman Triathlon YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us on the Ironman Insider Podcast presented by Morton. And be sure to keep an eye on this space for more great conversations as our Ironman Pro Series starts just here in a few weeks. I'm Matt Lieto, and thank you so much for listening in.